Welcome to Linguistics Tube. On this channel, you will find videos about learning English, as well as more scientific videos about linguistics and psychology, and more general academic topics such as study skills, conducting research, and writing academic articles. This episode is part of my series about research skills. In general, the process of conducting research focuses on four broad areas. Firstly, the ability to gather information about a topic. Secondly, the ability to analyze and interpret the information. Thirdly, the ability to make conclusions as a result of your analysis. And finally, the ability to present your research either through speaking or writing. In another episode in this series, I introduced the typical structure for an academic article in the social sciences. This is the structure that you should use in order to present research that you have conducted, especially if you collected primary data in order to get your results. That episode contains almost everything you need to know about producing a high-quality academic article. However, there are two other aspects of not only an academic article, but all high-level academic writing in general, which are often overlooked, yet absolutely essential and crucial. These are the concepts of following a specific set of formatting rules, and how to reference and avoid plagiarism. The information I will share with you in this episode is not only essential for an academic article, but for every piece of academic work that you write at university. This includes short essays and huge dissertations. In my opinion, formatting and referencing correctly is extremely difficult, and it took me years of practice to fully master. So, if you are in your first or second year at university, then you do not need to reference completely correctly all the time. Think of this episode as the start of a process of improving the rigor of your academic writing skills and your university study skills more generally. Without a doubt, if you learn and practice these skills now, then referencing and formatting correctly will not be a challenge in the future. Let's get started. You can see the basic outline of this episode here. Firstly, I'll outline the basic information about the style and format that you should use in a typical academic article. Then, I'll introduce referencing and the related concept of plagiarism. After that, we'll dive into how to actually reference. For a typical academic article in the social sciences, whether you are a university student or a professional researcher, there are many requirements and rules for the format that you must use. At university, failing to follow these requirements may reduce your grade, and for a professional researcher submitting academic articles to academic journals, the article might be rejected. This demonstrates the importance of paying close attention to the requirements when writing an academic article. So, whose rules are they, and where do they come from? Well, they have been created by a specific organization and are used by researchers all over the world. The organization which created and enforces them is the American Psychological Association, or the APA. If you are a Chinese speaker, then you can see a translation of this association on the screen, as well as an explanation in Chinese of this organization and its aims. The concept of an organization which creates rules for the style and format that academic articles must follow can be a difficult concept to grasp at first. So, let's briefly explore the history of this phenomenon and the reason that we must use it in academic articles. The APA is an organization which owns many journals in the field of psychology. an academic journal is a company which publishes academic articles. Researchers submit their articles to journals in the hope of them being accepted and published by a journal. In order to create a sense of cohesion and consistency, the APA created rules and requirements for the style and format that all academic articles published in their journals must follow, so that every academic article has the same style and format. The researchers must write their article already with these rules and requirements, otherwise the journal will reject the article. Anyway, that explains how this started. Then, over time, the APA became more and more influential in the world of academia, and so the APA's rules and requirements for academic articles were adopted by journals which are not in the field of psychology, but in the broader field of social science. As we've previously said, social science is the scientific study of human society and social relationships. It is a huge field that includes psychology, as well as other fields such as linguistics, economics, politics, anthropology, history, law, and sociology. This probably happened because the APA's style rules were objectively very good rules for the format of articles, and also because other journals wanted to align themselves with the APA because it is a very prestigious organization, and so using their style increases the status of other journals. Because of this trend of journals adopting the APA style, if you want to publish an academic article in the field of social science, then you should use the APA style when writing your article, because all journals in this field require it. This will save you time when preparing to submit it to journals. Of course, while social science is a very broad field that includes many popular subjects, it certainly does not include every subject. Naturally, the journals of other fields are owned by different companies, and those companies all have different formatting styles. For example, if you are a humanities student, which means that you study a subject like languages, literature, philosophy, history, or religion, then it is very likely that the style you must use in your academic articles will follow the rules of the Modern Language Association, the MLA. This is another famous organization which owns many of the journals in the field of the humanities, and the journals of similar subjects not owned by this association align themselves with the MLA by using its style rules to increase their prestige. So, overall, remember that any academic article which presents a research project that requires you to collect data about a topic related to society will be firmly situated within the field of social science. In that situation, you must use the APA style and format for your academic article, as well as for any essay or assignment for a subject in the social sciences. In this episode, we will discuss the general formatting requirements of the APA that you must use in a social sciences essay or academic article, and then we will discuss the most important requirement of the APA's rules: how to correctly reference in an academic article or a university essay within the field of the social sciences. The APA's rules about formatting and referencing are occasionally updated. In late 2019, the newest version was published. This is the 7th edition of the APA's rules. Therefore, the information I will share with you is based on the 7th edition of the APA's rules. However, because the 6th edition is still widely used, but now technically out of date, I will explain the differences between them when it is relevant. The first formatting rules I'll share with you are about headings. If you have watched the episode about how to write an academic article, then you will have seen that you must use headings and subheadings to separate the different sections. Headings identify and separate the major sections of the report, like introduction and methods, and subheadings separate the smaller sections within the major sections, like the literature review within the introduction. These sections must be numbered and bold. Bold means that the text is thick black. All sections except the abstract are numbered, so the introduction is section 1. Your subheadings must be indented by one amount. This sounds complicated, but it is very simple. You have all seen paragraphs whose first line begins slightly to the right of the rest of the paragraph. This is indentation. To do this, there is an indent button in Microsoft Word, which you can see on the screen here. If you can't find it, then you can press the Tab button on your keyboard, which is in the top left corner under the Escape button. Even though your headings and subheadings must be bold, they must not be underlined or italicized. Underlined means that a line is drawn under the text, and italicized means that the text leans slightly to the right. Other format styles might do this, but the APA certainly does not. Regarding the title of your article, it must be centered at the top of page 1. APA articles do not have a title page, which is a specific page only for the title of the article and the name of the researcher. Regarding the position of the headings and subheadings, they must not be centered in the middle of the page, unlike the title. Instead, they must be on the left side of the page. And regarding their size, the title and the main headings must be size 14, and the subheadings must be size 12. Now for the rules about everything else. Regarding the main text in your article, it must all be size 12, which is the same size as the subheadings. Every word in your article must use the font Times New Roman. A lot of people say this font looks old-fashioned and boring, but it is the only font that APA journals accept. Next, the line spacing throughout your article must be 1.0. In some versions of Microsoft Word, the default line spacing is 1.15, so you must ensure you check this and change it if necessary. Next, like with subheadings, you must indent new paragraphs within your sections. Some journals require you to separate paragraphs with one line, but you cannot do this in APA journals. So, there must be no spaces between your paragraphs within the main sections. However, there are two situations in which you must insert spaces. Firstly, between the main sections, such as between the introduction and methods sections, there must be 2 empty lines. And between the subsections within the main sections, there must be 1 empty line. But remember that between paragraphs within sections, there must be no empty lines. Here are the final rules to follow. In terms of how your text is aligned on the page, it must all be justified. This means that the lines are stretched to the right side of the page, so both the left and right sides of the page are straight vertical lines. Next, you must use the default setting for the page margins, which is called normal in Microsoft Word. Page margins are the amount of space between the edge of the paper and the area where you can write. Finally, there are rules regarding what you should include at the top and bottom of every page, which are called the header and footer. In the header, on the left side, you must write your name. On the right side of the header, you must write the date that you submitted your academic article. If you are a university student, then this could be the deadline date. But if you are submitting an academic article to a journal, then it will simply be the date that you submitted it. Finally, in the footer, write the page number in the center. Microsoft Word can do this automatically. Now that we have explored the main rules that you must follow when formatting your academic article, we will move on to the most important formatting rule: how to reference other people's work in your article. We'll also explore the related area of plagiarism, which is essentially the negative consequences of not referencing properly. By following all the rules, you will avoid the risk of anyone suspecting you of plagiarism. Referencing, in a nutshell, is the concept that we must recognize and give credit to another person or organization if we use their information, ideas, or words in our own writing. Every time we use someone else's words in a piece of writing, we must clearly show it. This is called a reference. The verb, by the way, is to reference. In addition to requirements on the style of academic articles, the APA also has rules governing how to reference in an academic article. For the rest of this episode, we'll explore how to do this, because you must use the APA's rules to reference other people's work in any essay or article that you write in the social sciences. You might be asking yourself, apart from the fact that the APA requires us to reference other people's ideas, information, and words, what actually is the point of referencing, and why exactly do I need to do it? Surely, if someone else said it, then it is available for me to freely use. Probably all students ask this question when they first learn about the minefield that is referencing. And rightly so, because it is very difficult and time-consuming to do correctly. Well, apart from the fact that we must do it if we want to publish our research and get a high grade at university, I can think of 4 important reasons why referencing is necessary in your academic work. Firstly, telling the reader when you used someone else's ideas, information, or words helps to avoid being accused of plagiarism. It is not my intention to spend a long time warning you about the dangers of plagiarism. Instead, I want to focus on how to avoid it. But I will just say that, as I'm sure you know, if you don't reference someone else's work, the reader might think that you are being dishonest, because it will appear to the reader that you are pretending that someone else's work is your own work. I will talk a little more about this later in this episode. Secondly, referencing correctly is advantageous because it shows the reader that you have done a lot of research and preparation for your topic. This will give the reader confidence that your paper is valid and scientific, because you have demonstrated that it fits comfortably into the existing research up to this point. Thirdly, referencing correctly throughout your article makes it clear to the reader that your research question and hypothesis, as well as your overall conclusions, are not only based on your own ideas and opinions, but also supported by other people's research. This is especially helpful if the existing research that you explored in your literature review supports your hypotheses and findings. This helps to increase the overall rigor of your article. Finally, apart from proving to the reader that your research is valid and reputable, referencing is also helpful and useful for the reader. This is because if the reader thinks that the research you referenced is interesting, he or she can easily find the original text and read about it himself or herself. In other words, your article can be a map to other articles on your topic, which the reader of your article will probably be interested in. These 4 points demonstrate why referencing is helpful as well as necessary. Plagiarism is a broad category, which includes a few specific types. All of them are serious, but perhaps some are more serious than others. Most broadly, we can divide plagiarism into 2 types. The first is the one that everyone thinks of when they hear the word plagiarism: intentional plagiarism. To commit this offence, the writer deliberately pretends that someone's words, information, or ideas are his or her own. This happens when the writer does not reference the source of the information by giving credit to the original author. By the way, the source is the place that the original information comes from. Anyway, there are 2 ways to intentionally plagiarize. The first is directly copying words from another source and not putting them in quote marks and not referencing the author. The second is rewording or paraphrasing someone else's words and not referencing the author. Both of these are dishonest academic behavior, and if the writer is caught, then he or she would face serious consequences. At university, the punishment depends on the amount of intentional plagiarism. If it is a few sentences or paragraphs in a long assignment, then the assignment would get 0%. If an entire essay or dissertation is intentionally plagiarized, the student might fail the entire year or even be told to leave the university. If it happens in an academic journal, then the writer will be banned from ever publishing in that journal again. The second type of plagiarism, which is also serious, is unintentional plagiarism. This is usually the result of poor and incomplete referencing throughout a piece of writing. So, in this type, the writer didn't intend to cheat, but because he or she didn't reference properly, he or she accidentally plagiarized. This is very common in undergraduate students, because they might not have been properly taught when, where, and how often to reference. Overall, then, intentional plagiarism is cheating, and unintentional plagiarism is because the writer actually needs more practice at referencing. Nevertheless, most universities are very strict with both types, so their approach is actually guilty until proven innocent. Therefore, they assume that any plagiarism is intentional until you can provide a convincing explanation or evidence of why it was actually unintentional. But at the end of the day, if you have learned how to reference correctly, then there is no excuse for either type. Personally, when I write an academic article, or when I wrote essays at university, I ensured that I finished writing the essay 2 days before the deadline, and I spent the entire last day doing and checking my references. So, I recommend you do the same. Do not think of referencing as an afterthought. Think of it as a crucial aspect of the writing process, which deserves at least 1 full day of effort. There are several other academic problems, which are as dishonest and serious as plagiarism, and will get a student in serious trouble at university, or a writer in trouble at a journal. The first is called collusion. there are actually two forms of collusion. Firstly, writer A asks writer B to help write writer A's essay or article. They could be friends, classmates, colleagues, or teacher and student. This means that there are technically two writers, but writer A claims that only he or she wrote it. The second form of collusion is actually the opposite situation. In other words, there is actually only one writer, but there is officially two writers. This is sadly quite common when submitting an article to a journal. Usually, this occurs when a professor asks his or her student to write an academic article, and then the professor states that he or she is one of the writers. So, the professor did not write anything, but it looks like he or she wrote a substantial amount of it. Whether at university or to a journal, both of these types of collusion are dishonest and unacceptable. The next common academic offence, which happens frequently at universities, is for the student to pay someone else to write it for him or her. There are plenty of websites which offer this service, but I'm sure I do not need to explain why it is unethical. While it is quite easy to prove with software and technology whether an article was plagiarized, it is much more difficult to prove whether someone else wrote an assignment. If the teacher suspects it, then he or she might compare the current assignment to previous ones and analyze the similarity of the writing styles. Perhaps the technology will exist in the future to make this decision, but right now it does not. On to the third and final academic problem. It is called self-plagiarism. In a nutshell, it happens when a writer submits a piece of writing that is extremely similar to a piece of writing that the writer previously submitted elsewhere. At university, this happens when a student submits a piece of writing for an assignment that he or she previously submitted for another assignment in a different class. For example, let's say that in his first year of university, a student takes a course about writing. For the final assignment, he or she must write an argumentative essay on any topic. Then, 1 year later, the student takes a public speaking course. For this final assignment, he must write an argumentative speech on any topic. These two tasks were basically the same, so the student decides to save time by reusing the essay that he previously wrote. This seems efficient and smart, because it saved him time and fulfilled the requirements of the assignment. However, the problem is that the student only wrote one piece of writing, but submitted it twice, so it is unfair to other students who needed to write two pieces of writing. The first one being the argumentative essay in the first year, and the second one being the argumentative speech in the second year. For this reason, this situation is called self-plagiarism, because the student needed to copy himself in order to complete the assignment, and didn't explain that he had previously submitted this piece of writing elsewhere. This might seem like a strange concept, but if it is detected, then the student will almost certainly fail the second assignment. Overall, these problems are all unethical, and the consequence of committing them at university is severe, so it is important to be aware of them and avoid them as much as possible. From this point, I will introduce and explain how the APA requires references to be formatted in its articles. To reference properly in an academic article, the APA's rules require you to do two things. Firstly, you must write a short, small reference within the text of the academic article exactly where you use someone else's words or ideas. And secondly, you must write a long, full reference at the end of your academic article. This will appear in the 6th section of the article, which is the References section. This section is simply a list of all the sources that you referred to in your article. If you refer to one source multiple times, you only need one long reference in the References section, but you must write a short reference within the text every time you refer to the source, or use information from that source. Let's now explore these two types of reference in more detail. The small, short reference that you include within the text every time you refer to someone else's work is called an in-text citation. The APA has specific rules regarding how to format the in-text citation. Specifically, the in-text citation is written in parentheses. These are round brackets, and the in-text citation must include the writer's family name and the year that the source was published. In addition, if you quote a book or academic article exactly, then you must also include the page number of where those words are located in the source. This is so the reader can check the quote himself or herself, if necessary. However, you don't need to include the page number if you paraphrase or summarize the words of the source. In that situation, only the writer's name and the year of publication is necessary. There are two ways to format an in-text citation. Which format you use depends on the grammar of your sentence. The first way is for the writer's family name to be within the main text, and then the year of publication to be in parentheses. For example, Campion, 2019, claims that referencing is very important. The second way to format it is to put the entire in-text citation in parentheses, so that the writer's family name is no longer within the main text. For example, it has been claimed that referencing is very important. Campion, 2019. The next rule on formatting the in-text citation is regarding the number of writers of the source. If the source only has one writer, then his or her family name simply appears within the in-text citation. For example, Campion, 2019, pages 52 to 53. Remember that the citation must include the page numbers if you directly quote someone's words. Therefore, this example is the citation format for a quote. Within the parentheses, firstly is the family name, then a comma, then the year of publication, then a colon, and the page numbers of the words that I quoted. Next, if there are two writers, then both names appear in the in-text citation, joined with an ampersand, which is the symbol that means and. For example, Campion and Wei, 2019, pages 52 to 53. Finally, if the source has more than two writers, then you only include the first writer's name and write et al. Afterwards. This is Latin and simply means that there are more people, but there is not enough space to write them all. If you are a Chinese speaker, then you can see a translation of et al. On the screen. For example, Campion et al., 2019, pages 52 to 53. In all of these examples, you can see the page numbers 52 to 53. Remember that you only do that if you are quoting the writer's words. If you paraphrase them, then you do not need to write the page numbers. Finally, What verbs should you use when you are citing? Here are my recommendations. Wang 2019 states that. Wang 2016 says that. Wang 1991 reports that. Wang 1967 argues that. Wang 1911 claims that. Wang 1721 suggests that. Wang 1654 supports my claim that. Wang 1442 reveals that. From these verbs, you can see that you should always be as cautious and neutral as possible when reporting what someone else said. Do not use verbs like prove, which is a very strong claim and is difficult to demonstrate. So, do not say, Wang's 2018 research proves that my hypothesis is correct. Instead, say, Wang's 2018 research suggests that our hypothesis is correct. Or, Wang's 2018 research supports our hypothesis. Before we continue, I have a question for you. In the examples on the screen, what do you notice about the tense of the verb, especially as the year changes? You must always use the present tense when referring to what the writer said. This might seem strange, especially if the text is very old. However, you must still use present tense, because the writer's ideas and words still exist, and so we assume that, even if the writer has been dead for many years, the claims that the writer made are still his or her opinion. The only situation in which you should use the past tense when citing a writer is if the information that you are citing is the writer's previous beliefs. In a subsequent source, the writer states that he or she changed his or her opinion. In that case, you should use the past tense to cite the writer's previous old beliefs, and the present tense for the writer's current beliefs. Let's now explore the two ways to use someone else's words in your article in more detail. This is the difference between quoting and paraphrasing the source text. To reiterate, quoting is using the exact words from the original text, and paraphrasing is maintaining the meaning but changing the words. For both of these, because the ideas and information are from someone else, you must still reference the source. The general rule when choosing whether to quote or to paraphrase is that you should paraphrase as much as possible and quote as little as possible. So, you should not use a lot of quotes in an academic article or university essay. There are only two situations in which a quote is more effective than a paraphrase. Firstly, when the words that the original writer used are exactly the way that you want to phrase it. Thus, you cannot think of a better way to write it, and changing the words weakens the impact of the original words. Secondly, you might need to quote if the words that you want to quote are famous and iconic, so you want to acknowledge the exact way they were originally written. However, these situations are rare. So, for the majority of occasions, a paraphrase is perfectly sufficient. Always keep in mind that a quote must never replace what you want to say. Instead, it should only support it. If you fill your article with quotes, then other people's words become more important than your own, and that is not your goal. To avoid this, my strategy is, when I quote, I must firstly explain to myself why I want to quote instead of paraphrase, and I also make this clear within the text. So, as I just said, the better option is to paraphrase or summarize the information that you want to reference, and then use an in-text citation. However, if you find yourself in the rare situation that a quote is more appropriate than a paraphrase, then the APA has rules about how exactly to format it. In your in-text citation, you must put the writer's family name, year, and page number, if it comes from something with pages. For the quote itself, the APA recommends you to integrate the quote into your sentence and put quote marks around the quoted words. You can see two possible ways to do this on the screen. Firstly, Turner, 2007, page 14, suggests that you should work better, not longer. Secondly, Turner, 2007, page 14, says this: work better, not longer. Use whichever feels more appropriate for your situation. Most of the time, the words you quote will only be a few words. The quote on the previous screen is a typical length. It will thus fit within 2 lines of text. If this is the case, then the quoted words must be within your paragraph. However, you might very rarely want to quote much more than a few words. It will occasionally be appropriate to quote several sentences, or even an entire paragraph. In this situation, the quote will certainly be longer than 2 lines. For this, the APA also has rules. Firstly, the quote must be placed in a separate, indented paragraph. Secondly, the page number is separated from the in-text citation. Instead, it appears at the end of the quote, not together with the year of publication. Thirdly, you must not use quote marks. Let's look at some examples of quoting and paraphrasing the same text. This is the paragraph that we want to reference in our article or essay. It is taken from page 199 of an academic article by Jones, which was written in 1998. This is all the information we need for the in-text citation. Students often had difficulty using the APA style, especially when it was their first time citing sources. This difficulty could be attributed to the fact that many students failed to purchase a style manual or to ask their teacher for help. We have 3 options to reference it. Either use 2 lines of it in a short quote, all of it in a long quote, or we can paraphrase it. Let's look at each of those now. Here are the 2 ways to write a short quote. In this situation, the words are inside the paragraph because only a short part of the text was used, so it fits into 2 lines. According to Jones, 1998, page 199, students often had difficulty using the APA style, especially when it was their first time. How can teachers deal with this? Jones, 1998, page 199, claims that students often had difficulty using the APA style. How can teachers deal with this? Next, all of the paragraph has been used, so it is a long quote. Therefore, it is a separate paragraph. Note that the text is 1 size smaller, and the page number is at the end of the quote, not within the in-text citation. In Jones's 1998 study, he had this to say: students often had difficulty using the APA style, especially when it was their first time citing sources. This difficulty could be attributed to the fact that many students failed to purchase a style manual or to ask their teacher for help. Page 199. How can teachers deal with this? And finally, here are two options for a paraphrase. Remember that the original words are: students often had difficulty using the APA style, especially when it was their first time citing sources. The paraphrases thus maintain the meaning, but rephrase the text itself. According to Jones, 1998, the APA style is a difficult citation format for first-time learners. The APA style is a difficult citation format for first-time learners. Jones, 1998. In these two options, the writer's family name is either inside or outside the parentheses. Both styles are perfectly acceptable. In the previous two sections, we dealt with the format for the short in-text citation. For the remainder of this episode, we will learn how to write the long reference that you must include at the end of your article in the references section. We'll firstly discuss the format for sources written in English, and secondly the format for sources written in another language. This will be helpful if you are an international student or simply a bilingual speaker, as you will be able to understand sources in another language. At the end of an academic article or university essay, after the conclusion, you must include a references section, which contains the long, full references of all the sources that you used. This list will be arranged not in the order that the references appeared in your text, but in alphabetical order, using the author's family name. In general, APA references use the following format: writer's family name, comma, the first letter of the writer's given name, full stop, the year, in parentheses, full stop, the title, in italics, full stop, then the publication information, full stop. However, it is not as simple as this, because different types of sources have slightly different formats. The common sources you may refer to in your article include books, academic articles, websites, PDFs, PowerPoint slides, videos from websites, films, and TV shows. We will learn how to reference these different sources in this section. We'll start with books. You can see the general format for books at the top of the screen. In the newest version of the APA's rules, the 7th edition, you write the writer's family name, comma, the first letter of the writer's given name, full stop, the year, in parentheses, full stop, the title, in italics, full stop, the publisher information, full stop. The 6th edition of the APA's rules included another piece of information: the city and country of the publisher. For example, if the publisher is based in London, the capital of the UK, you would also need to include this information between the book title and the name of the publisher. However, the 7th edition has removed this requirement. Nevertheless, it is possible that some journals or universities still require this information now, but that will change over time. By the way, the reason for including the country name as well as the city is that, for example, there is a London in the UK, the USA, and Australia. So, it was necessary to explain exactly which city it was published in. Now, let's build an example together. The writer is Richard Dawkins. It was published in the year 1989. The title is The Selfish Gene, and the publisher is Oxford University Press. The complete full reference looks like this. Dawkins, R. 1989. The Selfish Gene. Oxford University Press. Pay attention to the title. You can see that only the first letter of the first word is capitalized. The S in selfish and G in gene are lowercase in the reference, even though the original book title has capital letters. And there are two formats for the short in-text citation, either Dawkins 1989 or Dawkins 1989, depending on the grammar of the sentence. Here are two more examples of complete references and in-text citations. As always, there are two options for the format of the in-text citation. Smith, H. and Jones, P. 2002. Language Acquisition, Routledge. Gardner, Q. Robinson, P. and Dewhurst, K. 1995. Language in Secondary Schools. Kluwer Academic Publishers. In the second example, there are three writers, so the in-text citation uses et al. Gardner et al. 1995. Remember, if you paraphrase the writer's words, then the in-text citation only needs the year. However, if you quote the writers, then you also need the page number. Of course, when you create a reference yourself, the information won't be as readily available as on the previous screens. Instead, you will need to look at the book to find the information you need. It is usually within the first few pages. So in your first activity, create a full reference and an in-text citation for the book whose information is on the screen now. One piece of advice: if there are several years, like in this example, use the most recent year. Please pause the video and complete this activity. Continue when ready. Here are the answers. There are two authors, so the in-text citation includes both of their family names, separated by an ampersand. Check whether your full reference is the same as mine. Next, let's look at the format for academic articles. Here is the general format. Writer's family name, comma. First letter of writer's given name, full stop. Year in parentheses, full stop. Title, full stop. The name of the journal, in italics, comma. The volume number, in italics. The issue number, in parentheses, comma. And the first page number to the last page number, full stop. Pay attention to the fact that, for books, the title of the book is in italics. But for academic articles, the title of the article is not italicized, but the name of the journal is. Also, the first letter of every word in the name of the journal is capitalized. Let's now build a full reference for an academic article. Like before, I will firstly give you the information, and then later, you'll need to find the information yourself. Firstly are the writers, Daniel Casasanto and Lera Boroditsky. The article was published in 2008. The title is Time in the Mind, Using Space to Think About Time. It was published in the journal Cognition. The volume number is 106. The issue number is 2. And the article was on pages 579 to 593 of the journal. The reason that the page numbers do not start at 1 is because many articles are published together in one big collection, like a book. So, this article begins on page 579 of the collection. The complete full reference looks like this. Casasanto D. and Boroditsky L. 2008. Time in the Mind. Using space to think about time. Cognition. 106. 2. 579 to 593. You can see here that the title of the article is not italicized, but the name of the journal is. And, as always, there are two formats for the short in-text citation. Here is another example of a complete reference and in-text citations. Radke, O, and Yuan, X. 2011. Please don't climb trees and pick flowers for the sake of life. Making sense of bilingual tourism signs in China. Language and Intercultural Communication, 11, 4, 389 to 407. In your second activity, please create a full reference and an in-text citation for the academic article whose information is on the screen now. It can sometimes be difficult to identify the issue and volume numbers, but in most articles, as you can see here, they are clearly labelled. Also, don't forget that the article title is not italicized, but the journal name is. Anyway, please pause the video and complete the activity. Continue when ready. Here are the answers. Check whether your full reference is the same as mine. In your articles or essays, you should reference a lot of academic articles, because they are without a doubt the most reputable source of high-quality, objective, scientific information. And because they are one of the most complicated sources to reference, here is another activity for you. Please create a full reference and an in-text citation for the academic article whose information is on the screen. Pause the video to complete it and continue when ready. Here are the answers. Check whether your full reference is the same as mine. Remember that academic articles contain research that has been conducted by the writer. These are professional articles, published in academic journals. However, while at university, many students also need to conduct research and present it in a written article. The biggest article that a student will ever write is their final project, which at undergraduate level is called the dissertation, and at postgraduate level is either called a dissertation or a thesis. Almost all of the time, a dissertation or thesis isn't published. If the research in it is, then it will almost certainly be published in an academic journal as an academic article. Therefore, if you find a student's dissertation, it is probably in the university library, uploaded to the university's website, or uploaded to the writer's personal website. This is why you should reference it as an unpublished dissertation. The format is the writer's family name, comma, the first letter of the writer's given name, full stop, the year, title in italics, in square brackets, unpublished doctoral or master's thesis or dissertation, and the name of the institution, such as the university. Here is an example. This is actually the dissertation which I wrote for my master's thesis. Campion, J. 2014. The Effects of Grammatical Categories on Cognition, the Case for Mandarin English Bilinguals. Unpublished master's dissertation, Lancaster University. The next type of source that you may occasionally need to reference are PowerPoint slides. Perhaps you found a PowerPoint online during your research, or you want to refer to the information in your teacher's PowerPoints. Therefore, the two most common situations are firstly, your teacher's PowerPoint slides from a course you studied, and secondly, a PowerPoint that you found online during your own research. There are slightly different ways to reference these two situations. Firstly, the writer's family name, the first letter of the writer's given name, the year, the name of the course that the PowerPoint is taken from, then the PowerPoint title, in square brackets, PowerPoint slides, and then the information of the university. The format for a PowerPoint found online, firstly, is the writer's family name, the first letter of the writer's given name, the year, the PowerPoint title, PowerPoint slides in square brackets, the platform where you found the PowerPoint, and the URL, which is the website link. The first format contains the information of the course and university. The second format contains two other important pieces of information. Firstly, the URL, which is the website link. Secondly, the platform where you found the PowerPoint. There are many websites where teachers and researchers can upload PowerPoints for other people to see. One of the most popular is called SlideShare. So, for the platform, you would simply write SlideShare. Regarding the year, it could be the year that you took the course, the year that the PowerPoint was created, the year that it was uploaded or published on the platform. Choose whichever date is the most relevant for your situation. Let's build a full reference for the first situation. Firstly is the writer, Carol Sun. Next is the year that the course happened, 2019. Next is the course name, which in this case is a number, APM 5003. Next is the title of the PowerPoint, Exploring Methods for Psychological Research. Next is the school, which is the School of Social Sciences and Psychology at Victoria University in Melbourne, Australia. The complete, full reference looks like this. Sun, C, 2019. APM 5003. Exploring Methods for Psychological Research. PowerPoint slides. School of Social Sciences and Psychology, Victoria University, Melbourne, Australia. And, as always, there are two formats for the short in-text citation. Let's build a full reference for the second situation. Firstly is the writer, Carlos Lara. Next is the year that it was uploaded, 2015. Thirdly is the PowerPoint title, Second Language Acquisition. It was uploaded to the platform SlideShare, and the URL is on the screen now. The complete, full reference looks like this. Lara, C, 2015. Second Language Acquisition. PowerPoint slides. SlideShare. And the URL. And, as always, there are two formats for the short in-text citation. Here is an activity. Please create a full reference and an in-text citation for the PowerPoint whose information is on the screen. As you can see, this is a teacher's course PowerPoint. Please pause the video to complete this activity and continue when ready. Here are the answers. Please check whether your full reference is the same as mine. Next, it is very common to reference a website, as it might contain a news article or other useful resources. Of course, websites are more varied than books or academic articles, as there are many types of websites for many different purposes. Therefore, they can be more difficult to reference correctly. Here are some common situations. Firstly, the information on some websites is clearly written, published, or updated by a specific person on a specific date, such as a news article. Secondly, other websites do not state their writer. Thirdly, the website might not state the date that it was written, published, or updated. As a result, there are three reference formats for websites based on these differences, which you can see on the screen now. The first format is for a website with a writer. The writer's family name, the first letter of the writer's given name, the year, month, and day, the title in italics, the website name, retrieved, month, day, year, from the URL. Retrieved means the date that you accessed the website. Next, the format for a website without a writer. The website name, year, month, day, title, retrieved, month, day, year, from URL. And finally, the format for a website without a writer and no date. Website name, ND, which means no date. Title, retrieved, month, day, year, from URL. For the second and third formats, you can see that if the writer's name and the website name are the same, then write the website name at the start of the reference instead. For all three formats, you need to include the date that you accessed the website. This is because websites are easily and continuously updated or even deleted, so the information that you refer to might have disappeared by the time a future reader checks the website to find the same information. So, including the date is essentially insurance to protect you from the accusation of poor referencing. We'll look at examples of each format. Firstly, here is an article which is written by specific people. Yang, W, and Li, Y. 2021, June 4. Kunming braces for March of Wild Elephants. China Daily. Retrieved June 5, 2021 from URL. The in-text citation is the same as the previous sources. Here is an example of the second format. This is a website without a specific author, but it was updated on a specific date, which you can find at the bottom of the page. NHS 2018 November 5. BMI Healthy Weight Calculator. Retrieved June 5, 2021 from URL. The in-text citation is the same as the previous sources. And finally, here is an example of the third format. This is a general website without a specific writer or date. Wikipedia, ND. Plagiarism. Retrieved June 5, 2021 from URL. And again, the in-text citation is the same as the previous sources. Here is an activity. Please create a full reference and an in-text citation for this website. Firstly, decide which format to use, and then write the reference. Please pause the video to complete the activity, and continue when ready. Here are the answers. Check whether your full reference is the same as mine. Next, you may want to reference a PDF document. If it is a PDF of a book or academic article, then reference it as those types of source. But if it is a document or a file which contains useful information and isn't another type of source, then reference it as a PDF file. You should reference it like this: the writer's family name, the first letter of the writer's given name, the year and page number, the title, PDF file in square brackets, retrieved, month, day, year, from the URL. As you can see, if the document contains page numbers, which are actually printed on the pages, then reference all the page numbers of the article. For example, 1 to 10. If there are no obvious page numbers, then you don't need to include them. Finally, because most PDFs are found online, you should treat it like a website. But if it was found offline, then do not include the information about where and when it was retrieved. Here is an example. tsol.org, 2013, pages 55 to 67. Getting to Guangdong University of Foreign Studies, Guangzhou, China. PDF file. Retrieved May 29, 2019 from URL. This PDF is an article with page numbers, but no obvious writer. Therefore, the name of the organization which published the article is used in the writer position. Interestingly, tsol.org is not only the name of the website, but also the official name of the organization. When you reference other organizations, you probably would not include the .org section. Moving on now to another type of source. Sometimes it might be necessary to refer to a film. In this situation, as you can see, the general format is recognizable, but there are some significant specific differences. To reference a film, the format is the director's family name, the first letter of the director's given name, director in round brackets, year, the title, film in square brackets, and the name of the production company. In the 6th edition of the APA's rules, it was necessary to also include the producer's name, along with producer in round brackets, at the start of the reference, before the director's name. However, the producer's name is no longer required in the 7th edition. Let's build a full reference for one of my favourite films. Firstly is the director of the movie, Pete Docter. Secondly, the year that the film was released, 2002. The title of the film is Monsters, Inc. and the production company is Pixar Animation Studios. The complete full reference looks like this. Doctor, P, Director, 2002. Monsters, Inc. Film, Pixar Animation Studios. And, as always, there are two formats for the short in-text citation. For your next activity, create a full reference and an in-text citation for this film. Please pause the video to complete the activity and continue when ready. Here are the answers. Please check whether your full reference is the same as mine. Similar to movies, you might sometimes want to reference something that you watched on TV, or at least something that was made for TV. There are two broad categories of TV show: a long-running series and an individual standalone program that was broadcast. Therefore, there are slightly different referencing formats for these. Firstly, for a TV series, you write the producer's family name, the first letter of the producer's given name, executive producer, the years that the TV series was made, the name of the TV series in square brackets, and the name of the production company. Secondly, for an individual TV broadcast, you write the producer's family name, the first letter of the producer's given name, executive producer, the date of the broadcast, specifically the year, month, and day, the title of the broadcast, TV broadcast in square brackets, and the name of the TV network. Here are examples of these sources. Firstly is a reference for the long-running series Downton Abbey. Fellows, J, Neame, G, and Eaton, R, executive producers, 2010 to 2015, Downton Abbey, TV series, ITV Studios. The in-text citation consists of the producer, so because there are three producers, the et al. Format is used. Fellows, et al., 2010 to 2015. Next is a reference for an individual broadcast. A good example of this is a news broadcast. Here is a reference for one of the main news broadcasts in the UK, the BBC News at 10. Royale, P, executive producer, 2020, January 1. BBC News at 10. TV broadcast, BBC. Another common type of source is a video that can be watched online. Typical websites for this are YouTube, Youku, TED Talks, and so on. The format is very similar to previous sources. The author's family name, the first letter of the author's given name, the date of upload of the video, year, month, day. the title of the video, video in square brackets, the name of the website, retrieved month, day, year from the URL. The term author is a blanket term in this context. It could refer to the person who is talking in the video, or to the name of the channel or company who made and uploaded the video. Secondly, the date refers to the date that the video was uploaded to the website. It is always year, month, day. Let's look at two examples. Firstly, a TED Talk. Sandberg, S. 2010, December 21. Why we have too few women leaders. Video. TED. Retrieved June 5, 2021 from the URL. The author, whose name also appears in the in-text citation, is the name of the speaker in the video. Here is another example. PBS Off-Book, 2013, October 3. How to be creative. Video. YouTube. Retrieved June 5, 2021 from URL. In this case, the video does not contain an obvious author, so we must write the name of the YouTube channel in the author position, and this is also used in the in-text citation. Occasionally, depending on the purpose of your research project, you might need to reference a map. This is very similar to the format for a website. Firstly, you state the creator of the map, then the year, the title of the map, then map in brackets, the name of the website, retrieved month, day, year from the URL. You can see an example on the screen. Google, no date. Google Maps directions for driving from Cambridge to London. Map. Google Maps. Retrieved June 5, 2021 from the URL. You may occasionally need to refer to computer software or a mobile app. To do this, you firstly state the creator of the software or app, then the year it was published, the name of the software or app, the version number of the software or app in round brackets, computer software or mobile app in square brackets, and the publisher of the app or computer software. For example, the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store if it is a mobile app. You can see an example of each one on the screen now. Here is a full reference for a computer software. Microsoft, 2016. Microsoft Word, 2016. Version 2105. Computer software. And a full reference for a mobile app. Tencent Holdings Limited, 2021. WeChat, version 8.0.1. Mobile app. Google Play Store. We've now reached the end of this section. From this, you should have everything you need to be able to reference all the English sources you are likely to use in a typical academic article. However, if you need to reference another type of source, then please write a comment below and I'll explain how to do so. In the next section of this episode, we will briefly discuss the APA's rules for referencing sources in another language. It is absolutely acceptable, and I strongly encourage you, to use non-English sources in an English language academic article. This will be very likely if you are a non-native English speaker, and thus have easy access to sources in your native language. However, because the APA requires all academic articles that are submitted to its journals to be written in English, your references must all be written in English. There are some specific rules on how to convert a non-English source into an English reference. The requirements differ slightly depending on the type of source, but in general, you must firstly transliterate the writer's name and all the publication information, and secondly, you must transliterate and translate the title of the work. You undoubtedly know the meaning of translate, but perhaps transliterate is a new concept. Please pause the video and work out what transliterate means. Continue when ready. It means to write words using the letters of a different alphabet. Let's use the example of Chinese to demonstrate this. In the context of Chinese to English, it means to write the sounds of the Chinese words using pinyin, which is the system of Roman spelling. Let's now see some examples of how to reference Chinese sources. We'll start with books. Here, you can see all the information that needs to be included in the reference. In square brackets is the transliteration of the Chinese information. This is called pinyin. Let's now look at the reference. As you can see, all the information on the previous screen has been put into the correct format for books. However, regarding the pinyin, you do not need to include the lines above the letters. As you can see, the title is represented twice. Firstly, with a transliteration, secondly, with a translation in square brackets. You can see that only the transliterated title is italicized. The translation is not. Just as a side note, when there is no official translation of the source, you will need to translate it yourself. One more thing. The author's name is Chinese, so the family name is first and the given names are second. Don't forget that the order of the family name is different in Western and Eastern names. You will need to bear this in mind when writing your references section. I will not attempt to read this reference, so please pause the video and read it yourself. Here is a Chinese academic article. Again, I won't attempt to read it, so please pause the video and look at it yourself now. This follows exactly the same format as an English academic article, except for the translated title in square brackets. Always remember that in academic articles, the article's title is not italicized, only the name of the journal. Also, don't forget that the publication information is not translated, so the name of the journal only has a transliteration. Next is a Chinese website. Again, everything is the same as an English website, except for the translated title, which is in square brackets and is not italicized. And finally, I will show you the format for non-English videos. Of course, all the sources we learned about in the previous section can be converted into English if they are in another language. You just need to follow the basic rules that we've learned about in this section. I will show you one more example, Chinese videos, to cement your understanding of how to do this. This time, I have written the format to use, because I would like you to do a final activity. Please pause the video, find a non-English video on a non-English video website and create a long reference. If you are an English monolingual, then have a look on youku.com for a Chinese language video. You can use Google Translate to translate and transliterate the information. I will share my example with you after you have written yours. Pause the video now. Here is my example, which is an English vocabulary learning video from youku.com. In the final section, I will share some general advice about how to find good sources to reference and how to write the references section. Firstly, I want to share my advice on referencing with you. Firstly, it is common in books and some academic articles for the references section to be called the bibliography section. However, the APA states that this section must be called references, so please do not call it anything else. Secondly, when deciding which part of a person's name to include in your in-text citation, you must make sure that you check carefully what the person's family name is. It is easy to get confused for a few reasons. Firstly, like I said in the previous section, Western names always place the family name last, but Asian names are always the opposite. Secondly, some family names look like given names. For example, there is a linguist called Duncan James, but many people refer to him as Duncan, such as referring to his recent article as Duncan 2019, because they think that James cannot possibly be a family name. So, you must check this very carefully. Thirdly, within your academic article, if you use pronouns to refer to the writer, then make sure you check the gender of the writer and use the correct gender pronouns. For example, there is a famous linguist called John Lucy, and his most famous work is a book published in 1992. Unfortunately, many people assume that Lucy, 1992, must be a female, so they refer to Lucy as she. If you are not sure of the gender, then try to avoid using gender pronouns. Instead, use phrases like this linguist or the author instead of he or she. Fourthly, the references section must be alphabetized, using the first letter of the writer's family name. Other journals require the references list to be ordered using the order that the sources appeared in the article, but the APA does not require this. You do not need to manually alphabetize your references list. Instead, Microsoft Word has a function called Sort, which automatically does this. You can see the Sort button on the screen now. Finally, in order to make the references section easier to read, you must indent the references list. But you must do this in the opposite way that you indent paragraphs. Instead of indenting the first line only, in the references section, you must indent every line after the first line. So, the first line is fully on the left, and the subsequent lines are a few spaces to the right. You can easily configure Microsoft Word to do this, and you can see an example of this on the next screen. We have seen many types of source in this episode, but are some types of source better than others? I'll share my recommendations on the types of sources that you should mostly use. In general, you must aim to use the highest quality sources, because these provide the most accurate and convincing information, which in turn will make your hypotheses, findings, and conclusions more reputable and persuasive. The highest quality sources are books and academic articles, so you must use these as much as possible. The main reason that they contain the most accurate and convincing information is that they are peer-reviewed. Peer reviewing is a very simple concept. It means that someone reads someone else's writing and gives him or her feedback. For academic articles, it means that when a writer sends an article to a journal, it must be read by an expert on the topic of the article before it is published. If the expert believes that the article is not good enough, then he or she tells the journal not to publish it. Or, if the expert believes that it is mostly good, but some changes need to be made, then he or she gives feedback to the writer, who then improves the article. After that, it is eventually published. Therefore, the information in peer-reviewed sources is always more trustworthy than other sources, such as a random website or PDF document, because anybody can write anything and put it online, where it can potentially be seen by millions of people. But that information was not checked by experts beforehand, so it might be completely false, or at least very inaccurate. For this reason, you must minimize the use of non-peer-reviewed sources in a university essay. So, how many non-peer-reviewed sources can you reference in a university assignment? Well, it will of course depend on the nature of your assignment. But in general, I recommend that at undergraduate level, at least 50% of your sources must be from peer-reviewed sources, and 50% can be websites, videos, PowerPoints, and so on. At postgraduate level, it should be at least 75%. And in a real academic article, basically all of your sources must be peer-reviewed. So, this raises the question of how to find peer-reviewed academic articles. I recommend that, depending on your location in the world, you use one of two websites. Firstly, the vast majority of you will be able to use Google Scholar. You can access it at the URL on the screen. However, if Google Scholar isn't available in your region, then Baidu Scholar is another good option, which is available in every region of the world. It can be accessed at the website on the screen. Also, if you are a university student, then every decent university has its own website, which can be used to search for books in the university library and also academic articles online. Here are two examples. The first is Lancaster University's website called OneSearch. I graduated from Lancaster University, so I use this website a lot when writing my assignments and academic articles. Secondly is the Academic Resources Discovery System for Guangdong University of Foreign Studies. This is where I have taught since I left Lancaster University, so I also use this website regularly. However, importantly, for a university search website, in order to access the peer-reviewed academic articles, you either need to be on the campus or using the university's VPN to pretend that you are on campus. This is because these articles are not free, and the university pays the journals to access them. Thus, they are not freely accessible to people who cannot access the university internet. All these websites search many journals for relevant academic articles. So, all you need to do is enter your keywords in any language and choose whichever articles you want to read from the list of available articles. Keywords could be the name of the writer, some important words related to your topic, or even the title of an article that you already know. For example, you might have found the name of a useful article by looking at the references section of another article which is related to your topic. So, Looking at the references section of articles is a great way to find other relevant articles. Let's look at a quick example. For this, I've chosen a classic topic in the field of second language acquisition, the critical period hypothesis. On the websites, enter the keywords critical period hypothesis, second language acquisition. Then, you simply need to look at the results, choose a relevant article, and hopefully you can download it for free. The two websites obviously have a different layout, so the way to download articles is slightly different. On Google Scholar, look at the right side of every article. If it is available for free, then click the button PDF or HTML. On Baidu Scholar, under each article are 4 light blue buttons. Click the fourth button, the one furthest to the right, whose Chinese words I have written on the screen. This will allow you to download the article for free. Let's look at the websites now. This is the Google Scholar website. There are 4 relevant articles on the screen. For 3 of them, you can see PDF or HTML on the right side. If you click on that, you can download the article for free. The one that isn't available is a book, and books are rarely available for free online. On the left side, you can filter the results. If you only want to reference new articles from the last few years, which is important in academic research, then you can choose the dates of which articles are found. Look carefully underneath every article. The double quote button creates a full reference of the article, which you can copy into your references list. Secondly, if you are searching for useful sources, then click Related Articles to find similar ones to the article. This might find articles that didn't appear in the main search results. Finally, here is the Baidu Scholar website. You can see the blue buttons under every article. The second button creates a full reference for the article, and the fourth button allows you to download it for free. If you need further instructions, don't hesitate to write a comment below or send me a message. We have now reached the end of this episode. We covered a lot of important information, so I recommend you check your understanding of the difficult concepts before finishing. Thus, here are some questions which I would like you to answer. Please pause the video and do so now. If you would like to check your understanding of the information in this episode, then I highly recommend that you complete this short online course about plagiarism. In total, you need about 2 hours. Firstly, there is a short course, and finally, a test at the end. After this, you will have all the knowledge you need to avoid committing plagiarism and reference properly. This is the end of the video about the APA formatting system and the skills of referencing. If you liked what you heard, then you can find more videos in my Research Skills series, as well as other series on the topics of English and linguistics. Thank you for watching.